What's up everybody, I'm Matt.
And I'm Beth.
And today we're going to be reviewing the interior in the 2021 Genesis G80. So this is the all-new generation for the G80 from the ground up, completely new and different, and it's a radical departure, both on the outside and on the inside here. And this interior, I mean, it wows just about everyone that hops in here for the first time. I mean, it is, between the colors and all the tech and all the textures and stuff, it really just makes a statement in basically every square inch of this interior.
Yeah, it's super impressive. It's very classy, very beautiful. I think it looks really nice.
I mean, there's so much to cover here in this video, but this one we're in is an advanced trim. So the advanced trim is a mid-grade trim here for the 4-cylinder turbo version. You don't get all the features you get in the top prestige trim, so we don't have quite as many features to show off here, but it still is really well equipped, even with this one's as tested price of just under $57,000 with the all-wheel drive and everything. But anyway, first thing, sitting down in these seats. So believe it or not, these are leatherette seats. They're not real leather. That's something that's reserved for the prestige trim. But these seats still feel like real leather to me. They're very soft and comfortable. They have perforations in them here, so they're heated. And in the advanced trim here, they're ventilated as well. That's something you have to go up to this advanced trim for. And we're testing this vehicle in January, so we didn't test out the cooled seats. But historically, Genesis cooled seats usually work really, really well. But the heated seats work great. And heated steering wheel, by the way, is also standard here in all-wheel drive versions of the G80, so that's a nice touch to have. But I think these seats are pretty comfortable.
Yeah, they're really comfortable. And coming over to the passenger side, I can adjust the height, and I can also adjust everything else and do everything that the driver is capable of doing. Yeah. So it's very nice.
Yeah, it's great that this is one of the few vehicles that actually let you adjust the height, which is much appreciated. These 12-way seats are standard in Genesis models. That gives you the lumbar adjustment and stuff as well. If you do want 16-way adjustable seats, you can get those in the Prestige trim. That'll allow you to adjust the side bolsters and stuff. Also, that Prestige trim and the V6s will give you a massage function, which we don't have here in the Advanced to try out. So I can't really report on how that works, but everything else in these seats, though, is really good.
And I will say, even if you're looking at a leather seat as opposed to the leatherette, I would go for the leatherette. Save that money. It works just as well. It's just as comfortable, in my opinion. And I think that it still looks like it's leather. You wouldn't be able to tell if, you know, you're not having your nose up against it. So I think it's great.
Yeah, so I mean, there's other reasons to go for the higher trims if you want, but leather I don't think is, you know, one of the big reasons to jump up to a higher trim, because these seats are super nice. But yes, that's a great point. Moving on to the steering wheel here, though, you have a really nice wheel here. Has a good 9-3 grip, nice little 10-2 notches. I really like how the same colors from the interior extend onto the steering wheel here. You have some metal trim around it as well, some really nice little knurled metal roller wheels here, which are great. And you also have metal plated paddle shifters here on the back of the wheel, which feel really good too. And just a few buttons here on it, but very straightforward and easy to use. You'll also see you even have some knurled metal here on the tips of the turn signal stock and the windshield wiper stock, and so that's a nice little touch again to help this feel a little bit more expensive than some of the other competitors, honestly, even in the luxury field, that have some cheaper feeling touches here and there. So I think that's a nice little upgrade. And then moving on to the gauges here in the G80, all 4-cylinder versions of the G80 here just have this partially digital setup. So it's an 8-inch screen, which gives you a digital tack and that center screen. Unfortunately, though, it's not a fully digital gauge setup, and that is something that basically all the competition, the Mercedes, the Audi, and I think even the BMW, all give you those digital gauges in most trims of those models that this competes against. So that is one area where this might feel a little cheaper and a little more dated than some of those. You can get digital gauges in the top twin turbo V6 versions of the G80, and it's actually a 3D gauge cluster, so it has this auto stereoscopic feature, so you don't have to wear any kind of 3D glasses, but you still get a 3D effect. Very cool from what I've seen and heard, but I have not tested them personally. But these gauges here are still fine. They just don't wow you as much as some of the others. You know, Audi has like a full Google Maps view you can have in their gauges, and Mercedes has a ton of customizations with their gauges and stuff. I would say the gauges are one area that is a letdown here in the 4-cylinder versions, and I really wish the Genesis would at least offer those nicer gauges here in the 4-cylinder version if you don't want to have a ton of horsepower and you just want a nice luxury car. But anyway, I mean, they work fine. You know, the only thing is in the middle here, there's not much customization. It just shows you your tire pressures and then you know, just your fuel economy stuff, and that's about it. So nothing too impressive there even. And so, you know, all your audio information, all that kind of stuff, you're going to have to go over to your screen for in the middle. You can't see any of that stuff here in the gauge cluster. You can also, if you do get a Prestige trim, you can get a head-up display, but this Advanced trim does not have that either. So I'm not a huge fan of head-up displays, so I don't really miss that, but that is something that, again, you can get in a lot of the competition as well. So it is nice that at least you can get that here in the Prestige trim. But coming over to the center of the dashboard here, this is one of the most impressive parts of the G80, is this 14.5-inch widescreen display here. It's very high resolution. I think it actually is the largest center screen in any vehicle in this segment, and honestly in general I don't think there's any that measure larger than this. There are some bigger screens, like the Ram has a huge 12-inch screen, but it's also very wide, so it, you know, feels a lot bigger than this screen does. This one's very slim, but it's a really cool screen. I love how it defaults to this like screensaver type view, which will show you partially your maps and partially just the temperatures and stuff, but that's really nice. And then you have just, you know, all these different menu selections here, which can seem a little overwhelming at first glance, but in reality you only use a handful of them, so the others you're never going to really mess with, so you don't really need to worry about too many of them. And so as far as controlling this screen, one option is it is a touch screen. It is a little bit of a reach, but you can touch something, especially if, you know, there's something that's easier just to go and touch it instead of trying to fiddle with the controller. It is really nice to give you that option, especially considering, you know, you have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto here, and the G80s is standard. Unfortunately, it's not wireless, it is still wired, but whenever you do have your phone plugged in, you can have that. And with those interfaces, it's much easier to use touch, so I'm very much appreciating the fact that they give you that option. But the main way you're going to probably control this screen is with this little controller wheel down here, which a lot of people say reminds them of an iPod scroll wheel from you know, a decade or so ago. And you know, it's really so much classier than those were, though. I mean, you have this knurled metal on it, and some people don't like the fact that you can't get a really good grip on this. You kind of are slipping and sliding on it a little bit, and so it's not as precise as you would like it to be, but it feels really nice whenever you're using it. And you can also hit on the sides of it to, you know, swipe over and press the button in the middle there, you know, if you want to select things. And so it's fairly straightforward and easy to use, and you'll see other little buttons here for, you know, jumping around for home and stuff, as well as your volume and tune rockers, which are also very small, even a little bit hard to access for me. I wish they kind of stood out a little bit more.
Yeah, and one thing to mention about the passenger is that you really can't do a lot of stuff as far as controlling anything, because all of that stuff is on the driver's side, and since the screen is pushed back so much, it's kind of hard to like reach all the way up there, especially if you're sitting farther back or any lower. So it's kind of hard for the passenger to use.
Yeah, and it also, I mean, it's just everyone's doing this trend of everything being driver-centric. They want the driver to do everything and never have the passenger do anything. So that comes down to personal preference. I know some people just like controlling everything as a driver anyway, but it would be nice if this stuff was a little more centered to, yeah, give, you know, the passenger some type of, at least the volume knob. I mean, because having the volume knob on the driver's side whenever you have a volume scroller on the steering wheel, it's kind of silly to, you know, have multiple controls here on the driver's side for the same thing. So that kind of stuff would be kind of nice, but yeah, it's something you can get used to. I wasn't too annoyed with this whole interface. I think it works pretty well most of the time. I just really wish the CarPlay was wireless, considering a lot of 21 models for other brands do have that as wireless here for 21. So that is one thing that I'm not crazy about, but overall it's pretty good. Again, this is the very first year of the very first generation of this new infotainment system that Genesis is trying out here. They will probably make refinements down the road to this whole thing, but in the meantime, I think it's a pretty solid start. Also, going along with this infotainment system is the stereo system here in this vehicle, and I'm happy to report that they've really got the stereo system really good in this vehicle. So it's a Lexicon stereo, which I haven't been crazy about in the past, but this new one is really impressive. It's 21 speakers and 1,050 watts of power, and not only just the specs sound impressive, but it actually sounds impressive when you're listening to music. I would say it's definitely towards the top of the pack. I still don't think it outdoes some of the best systems out there. I think like the Bose Panerai system and the CT6 was a little bit better, but that vehicle's off the market now. And I think that, you know, maybe the Burmester systems and the Mercedes and some of those other ones, the Bowers and Wilkins and the Volvos, I think they all sound a tiny bit better. The other reason why this doesn't sound quite as good as those is because the vocals are still a little bit sharper than I would like at times. And I even tried turning the treble down and stuff to try and soften it up a little bit, and it's still just, there was a few times where it wasn't quite as pleasing to my ears as some of the best systems out there. Aside from that though, I mean, especially if you're listening to vocals, like I was listening to jazz and stuff, like that sounds fantastic. No issues with that. It's just vocals where it gets a little iffy sometimes. But overall, it's very good. A huge improvement over the previous Lexicon stereos and other Genesis models in the past. And so they're really making good progress with that. And so, again, not amazing, but certainly better than before. And that system, by the way, does come standard on Advanced and Up trims. The base model does not get the Lexicon stereo. But yeah, so that's a nice touch to have. And I'm glad they, include that even on the non-top trims, like this mid-grade Advanced trim has. And then coming down, you have just more of this open-pore wood. There's open-pore wood in a lot of this interior, and I love how heavily they use it, because some other luxury brands, they'll have a little bit of wood here on the doors and maybe little things here and there, but it's not like this enormous piece of wood going across the entire dashboard like it is here in the Genesis. And I think it really stands out nicely, and I love the open pore touch because it really just makes it feel a lot more just expensive to me, and reassures you that it is actually real wood, not just some fake stuff that's printed to look very convincing. And so yeah, it gives you a very high-end feel. I also love, even the engine start button looks and feels really nice. You have leather padding on the entire dashboard. Every surface of this vehicle honestly feels really nice. And so there's not a single finish in here that's like really hard plastic or really cheap feeling. Even like the bottoms of the doors, which usually get overlooked by most people, even those have a little bit of soft padding to them. So they really paid a lot of attention to detail to make sure that this feels premium in every way. You have padding down by your knees here. It's not super plush, but you do have some padding there. And so all that, they have done a very good job with every inch of this interior. But anyway, moving on to the climate controls here in the G80. It's also really cool that you have a little screen here. And aside from Audi, I don't think anyone else really offers a little screen down here for your climate controls like this does. It's pretty nice because it also, you can swap over and have it go to your rear control. So it is actually functional aside from just looking like a nice little display. It can actually change its appearance and stuff. And it also gives you haptic feedback whenever you touch on those buttons. So you can still kind of do it without staring at it and still kind of feel what you're touching in a way, even though there isn't any kind of like buttons to feel. You still can, have a positive affirmation that you're actually doing something, and you hear the audio thing as well to confirm that. But so that's all nice for those controls, and otherwise, just simple basic controls for your other climate stuff. And then even like the gear shifter is this beautiful thing of like knurled metal and then like some glass here on the top of it, and it actually has some backlighting as well that especially you can see at night looks really pretty. And this is just really awesome. I think the only one that can match this is the Volvo crystal shifter that they have in their top trims. Aside from that, I think this is hands down the nicest shifter I've seen in a luxury vehicle. I think very cool. And also, as far as lighting goes, you also have ambient lighting, and in this vehicle it's certainly more subtle than it is in like a Mercedes E-Class or something where you have like giant strips of ambient lighting. This, it just kind of does it in the cracks and crevices, and it's a little softer, not quite as intense. So if you're someone who really likes it to be really intense with your ambient lighting, this might not wow you as much at night as some of those will, but I think that this is a very classy approach, and I think it's nice to still have that ambient lighting so that it's competitive with all those in that regard as well. But anyway, moving on to the storage spaces here in the G80. They do a pretty good job. It's pretty on par with most other luxury sedans. So first off, in the doors here, you have a pretty large pocket, which kind of has a bottle cutout. It doesn't have like a pronounced cut.
Well, you'd have to put your bottle like sideways if you were putting a bottle in there, but
yeah, you definitely couldn't stand it up. And then over in the center here, you have this little area you can push back, and then it's nicely covered in wood, nicely damped for all that as well. But you'll see 2 USB jacks in there, and also this is where you'll find your wireless charging pad if you have a Prestige trim, but here in the Advanced trim you don't have that. It's just a bin. And then you have your 2 cup holders here, which are nice and easy to access, and then you have the center armrest, which feels nice and softly padded. But anyway, you open up the center armrest. I love how it splits in the middle, so both of us can access it very easily. And pretty decent size. It's not huge, but should be good enough, and pretty standard size like you get in a lot of other vehicles in this segment. And another little removable tray on the top there, and that's where you also find your only regular power outlet is right there. So nice to have that still. And moving on to the back seat here in the G80, it is pretty nice. Honestly, I thought it would be a little bit bigger, but it is still very competitive with all its dimensions and stuff. It's right in line with most of the others out there, maybe even just a smidge bigger in a few areas. But as far as rear seat room goes, I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I easily have about 4 to 5 inches of legroom to spare back there, so pretty good. Not amazing or anything, but if you do want more rear legroom, you're going to just have to go for the G90 instead. But I say it's plenty for most people. A good amount amount of headroom as well. Also, when you're looking up, you see this nice panoramic sunroof, which you get here. I believe this Advanced trim and up has it. I don't think it's standard on the base model, but that is really nice to have as well. And then you also, with the Advanced trim here, get this tri-zone climate control. When you look forward, you'll see the 2 air vents and then their climate controls back there, which are nice to have. And there's a fold down center armrest with 2 cup holders put into it, and there's also a little area you can open up, and that's where you will find your USB jack for that back seat. There's only that one there, but they're very comfortable seats. I mean, you know, it's just you sit a little bit lower and they just feel really nice and comfy. You also have pockets in those doors as well, and again, more of that wood trim and everything. And so overall, should be a really nice back seat for most people, and I don't think anyone's going to complain being back there. Trunk space in the G80 is also pretty good, very competitive with everything else out there for the most part. So that's a nice wide and long trunk there. And beneath the floor, you'll see an actual good size spare tire as well as your battery beneath that spare tire. So a little bit more hidden there. But so nice to have, you know, a good size spare. That's something you don't always get with a lot of the competitors. A lot of them just have run flat tires and that's it. So nice to have the spare here. It's also a power operated trunk here on the Advanced trim and higher. Overall, I think the whole interior, especially with this color combo, is really striking. I mean, you can get a more bland black interior and stuff like that if you want something that doesn't stand out quite as much, but I think this interior would be great. I mean, since it's a little bit darker, I don't think it's going to show wear as much as some of the lighter, you know, like tan colored interiors might get a little more discolored than this would. So I think this is a really nice happy medium. You give you some color in the cabin while still, you know, staying a little bit darker. And
yeah, I actually like this one because it's not too orange. It's definitely a brown, which is nice. yeah, and yeah, they just did a really good job with how they designed, where they used color, where they didn't use color and stuff. It's just all very, very premium feeling, very high end, and yeah, we really liked it a lot. So anyway, that's all our thoughts on the interior in the G80. Be sure to go watch the driving review if you want to hear all our thoughts on how the fuel economy is, pricing, all that kind of stuff. I go more in depth on all that, as well as how it actually drives as well. Definitely check out that video. But yeah, that's all of our thoughts. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. Huge thanks to Genesis for providing us here with the G80 to review, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.